now our friend and now our colleague, and we all times give some respect with Joanna Skip. And now I'm very pleased to give the floor to our Polish colleague, who is expert in the field of education and e-learning for adults, with a very interesting topic. The topic of her lecture is Can we survive without culture? Without culture. And please, Joanna, you have the floor. You can start your report.
Thank you. Once again, very good afternoon on this Monday from Poland. Right now, I can just inform you I switched my job officially. So right now I represent the Academy of Social Sciences in the city of Łódź, which is central Poland. So I hope the coming lectures in the coming months or in the new year will be through my new affiliation. And besides, I am also employed by the town hall, by the municipality of our city in Влоцлавеку, where I am also expert for international relations. So the fields in my professional life have changed a little, but as always, I am close to international relations and sociology, pedagogical issues, also adult learning. And I guess all of these will make up for the information, and they will make up the content more interesting because I will look at the topics from different angles. But still, I am academic. I am part of the academia world, so I guess we are sailing the same boat. Today, the main topic is: can we survive without culture, or can we live without culture? This is a very broad topic which invites and calls for deep philosophical, sociological, and anthropological exploration. And if we want to answer this academically, we first should examine what culture really is. Can you think for a little while and just answer to yourselves what culture means to you? And if you were to define culture, what is the notion behind it? So what is this concept of culture? As we know, probably there are many options and many ways to answer this question, as culture plays a fundamental role in human existence, and it is hard to imagine how what life could look like without it. So when we try to define culture, we inherently look at the complex and multi-dimensional phenomenon. This phenomenon encompasses quite a range of human activities, human beliefs, also many social behaviors. How do scholars define culture? Let's take Edward Taylor in 1871 and his definition. Culture is that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. And moving on 100 years forward to Clifford Geertz in 1973. Geertz views culture as a system of meaning that structures human behavior and interpretation of the world. In general, anthropologists define two main forms of culture. This is the first one is material culture, like tools, art, technology, and non-material culture, which are the intangible elements, and these are language, values, beliefs, and norms. So in short, we can say culture is symbolic. It is learned and shared experience of human existence, and it shapes identities, societies, and individual understanding of reality. So as we see, there are many concepts, but there is this definition which may be summed up as the culture being a multifaceted concept. So a concept with many ways of understanding and forwarding information. Culture is also seen as a defining feature of humanity. So this question, can we survive without culture? It challenges the important foundations of anthropology and human development. As there is this link between the humanity and culture. Culture is deeply joined with human evolution. And anthropologists like Franz Boas and Claude Lévi-Strauss argue that culture distinguishes humans from other species. Well, I mean argue, as they state it as a fact. Animals exhibit rudimentary forms of communication or tool usage, and humans are unique in the symbolic system. And the symbolic system is language, art, and rituals. And culture facilitated the development of complex societies and cooperation. It allowed humans to adapt to diverse environments beyond mere biological needs. It enabled intergenerational knowledge transfer, securing survival and progress. Without culture, humanity would be stripped of tools, language, and cooperation, which are the cornerstones that facilitated our survival as species on this planet. There are many cognitive and psychological perspectives. Psychologists argue that culture profoundly shapes human cognition, identity, and behavior. They emphasize that learning and development occur through social interaction within a cultural context. Moreover, language as a cultural artifact enables thought and self-reflection. And cultural norms and symbols provide a framework for interpreting reality and assigning meaning to experience. Without culture, individuals would lack the symbolic tools like language, like shared meaning, which are necessary for the structured thought, communication, and social bonding. Culture is also seen as the essential component of identity and social order. Culture serves as a foundation for these aspects. For in identity formation, humans derive their sense of their self through cultural belonging. For instance, traditions, religion, art, and shared history offer continuity and purpose. The social structure and governance. Culture establishes norms, laws, and moral frameworks that govern behavior. Culture provides social cohesion through shared values and practices. Culture is full of symbolism and meaning. Humans are inherently meaning-seeking beings. Art, religion, and philosophy, these are products of culture, allow individuals to interpret and cope with existential questions. Now, a counter-argument. Can a hypothetical existence devoid of culture create an individual? Even in such a scenario, human instinct to create meaning, symbols, and patterns would inevitably produce a form of culture. The absence of formal structures, for example, laws, may lead to chaos, but cultural behaviors like cooperation, storytelling, would likely emerge as survival mechanisms. Now, a bit of theoretical exploration. To hypothesize a life without culture, we would need to strip humanity of the very tools and frameworks that define it. Let's imagine the loss of language, that we lose our language. Language is a product of culture. Without it, communication, knowledge transmission, and abstract thought would be severely limited. How about the absence of social structures? Without norms, values, and customs, there would be no foundations for social order, relationships, or governance. The lack of art and expression, creativity, art, and storytelling are universal components of human cultures, and they fulfill psychological and emotional needs. So hypothetically, in the cultureless society, humans would exist in isolation, lacking collective identity or purpose. Meaning would be limited to biological survival rather than higher intellectual or emotional pursuits. Over time, even in this state, the proto-culture would likely emerge. So anthropological studies of isolated tribes or children who were raised without socialization, as we heard such stories, they demonstrate that humans seek patterns, structure, and connection, and they build these blocks by culture. So once more our question, can humans truly escape culture? The hypothesis of living without culture may in itself be a fallacy. Culture is not an external imposition, but rather an intrinsic aspect of human life. So this is coming from our own feelings and from our own souls, as we may say. The key perspectives that challenge this are: culture is seen as innate. So human brains are hardwired for symbolic thought and socialization, making culture unavoidable. Cultural universals. Despite vast cultural differences, anthropologists say that cultural universals, like rituals, family structure, language, exist across all societies. And emergence of new cultures in any environment devoid of existing culture, humans would spontaneously create new norms, symbols, and meanings. So culture is seen as the essence of human life, and living without it, both theoretically and practically, is impossible. Culture is not merely an external construct, but an integral part of what it means to be human. It shapes our identities, facilitates facilitates social cooperation, enables us to interpret and interact with the world in a meaningful way. Even in scenarios where existing cultural frameworks are erased, humans would instinctively generate new forms of culture as a way of survival in difficult times and meaning-making mechanism. And to ask whether we can live without culture is the question of the essence of humanity. Let's go back to the year 2020, when the pandemic broke out. And that was the time when we were cut off from official sources of culture, like cinema, theater, what we call, let's say, popular culture or high culture. And there were no concerts, no shows which we could attend. So we know that at that moment, oh, you've got a guest. Sorry, that was my cat, if you were watching. So we saw this over the pandemic, that people's creativity reached absolute maximum when everything from culture, which was usually offered on the way of pure attendance, we were offered the same options to participate online. So there were concerts online, there were theater shows and theater plays available online. So that is, I think, a way of showing how we develop as human beings. We are very creative, and if there is this gap or there is this something we miss, we try to make up for it. And I guess the pandemic time was times where the best, it was really a hard lesson, as we know, but also a way of sticking to normality and trying to survive in circumstances which were very difficult, but we made it somehow. Can we say that culture is something that we learn? I guess so. People are not really born with culture, as culture is acquired by learning, and it is acquired by sharing with others. The process of learning or acquiring culture is called enculturation. And enculturation can take place implicitly or explicitly. Explicit way occurs when culture is clearly expressed. It's like during a church sermon, for example, a congregation learns by repeating, and they learn the cultural beliefs and practices of all specific religious community rules, and they learn the norms and values which are stated directly. And implicit acculturation occurs when culture is learned through some indirect expression. Let's say there is a female toddler, a girl of, let's say, 3 years, and she enters into a room wearing a frilly pink dress, and her adult role models might just smile and exclaim, "Oh, how cute you are." And by interpreting this response, which is acceptance, she implicitly learns that within her cultural group, it is appropriate to look that way and dress in this specific manner. And her brother, however, might elicit a very different response for the very same behavior, which thereby signals to him that it is considered inappropriate to look and dress in this specific way. Through constant interaction, children implicitly and explicitly learn that cultural norms and values are of high social importance. And people move and interact with one another. They consistently experience acculturation and they participate in acculturation of others, which makes the notion of culture shared. Culture is learned because it is shared. The sharing of culture requires contact and communication between individuals, and shared culture connects people to one another. This makes culture centrally important in social relationships, which are the building blocks of a society. And mutual understanding through shared culture facilitates social cohesion and group formation. Because of this, culture is not only a vehicle of social inclusion, it can also contribute to social exclusion because culture is embedded into the social system of power. We see this especially now in present times when, for example, we have so many immigrants, foreigners across Poland, so many Ukrainian mothers with children, and children start and attend school. So sometimes there is some TV shows and some programs, and there is some even research done on this, that it is difficult to adapt when the children don't know the basic rules of culture. I'm talking about language, about behavior, about different system of values, which may be, which definitely is different in societies, and not only, it may also be different in regions, in specific geographical locations. So we see this with immigrants, not only Ukrainians, but also we get some international students in universities. For example, about 2 years ago, I had a group of African students, and there were about 100 of them who arrived to live in Poland. And the biggest problem they had was with the concept of time, as we have quite a very different attitude to the concept of time. And my African students could never respect the time. So they were always, absolutely always late. As they thought, it's like if I tell them the meeting starts at 2 p.m., so then for them it is completely fine to arrive at 2:30, because they just treat it as a signal that 2 o'clock is a starting time, and it doesn't mean that they have to be there at 2. Well, it is different in Polish reality. If you tell someone to be at 2, it means 2 or not 2:30. We are not as strict as like Scandinavians are maybe, or German people are even stricter on that, as I think they have zero tolerance. But for many of my African students, that was a hard lesson to learn. I guess they did learn finally, but it was really at the beginnings of our cooperation, it was a nightmare. So the concept of time and how we respect time is also a cultural aspect of this culture-specific feature of a society or region. And culture is a defining feature of human experience. Cultural diversity is also a central factor for human survival in diverse environments. So human capacity for culture extends 2.5 million years of history. And this is the evidence we have of stone, tools, and cave paintings, as we consider these the first visible and discovered symbols of culture. And archaeological evidence of culture originates in the Hominidae family, and it includes fossil and living animals. Early research by primatologists as Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey established that non-human primates engage in very similar behaviors as humans. Many primates live in societies with the sophisticated social alliances, so they make social connections and dependencies. They can learn from experience and modify their behavior. They have tools, they can solve problems, they form hunting strategies, and some primatologists argue that non-human primates can even learn a language. Culture is also dynamic. As culture is dynamic, it means it is adaptive to changing circumstances. And it means that culture is constantly changing as people encounter novel circumstances and new interactions. In addition, different people within the same cultural group interpret and perform culture in different ways according to their unique experiences and positioning within a particular society. The dynamic nature of culture, it challenges ideas about traditional and authentic culture, which represents culture as static and independent of changing circumstances or individuals. Culture, as we see from the very beginning, is a difficult word or notion to define. There are at least 6 common ways that the word culture is used in the United States. For the purposes of exploring the communicative aspect of culture, they will define culture as the ongoing negotiation of the learned and patterned beliefs, attitudes, values, and behaviors. Unpacking the definition, we can see that culture shouldn't be conceptualized as stable or unchanging. Culture is negotiated, as well as we will learn later today. Culture is dynamic. Culture can be traced and analyzed. The definition also points that culture is learned, which accounts for the importance of socializing institutions. And these socializing institutions include family, school, our colleagues, and the media. Culture is patterned in that way that it is recognized among different groups. There is also some kind of deviation for and resistance to those patterns, which are made by individuals, and which is why cultural patterns change over time. And last, the definition acknowledges that culture influences our beliefs about what is true and false, what is good and bad. And our attitudes include our likes and dislikes, our values regarding what is right and what is wrong, and also our behaviors. As we say, we have some kind of national culture symbols. So national culture is a shared set of beliefs, values, customs, and behaviors that define the nation's identity. For example, American culture is often associated with apple pie, baseball, the 4th of July, and for example, Brazilian culture is connected with samba, bossa nova, or capoeira. We also have another concept, which is called regional culture. So the unique cultural characteristics of specific regions or geographic areas within a country, they are often reflected in distinct cuisine, in music and customs. We also have another concept, namely organizational culture. This is the set of shared values, beliefs, and behaviors that shape a corporation's identity and guide its operations. For example, Google fosters a culture of creativity, collaboration, and employee well-being. We also have another notion, which is called popular culture. The cultural products and trends that are widely accessible and popular among the general public. The examples include iconic franchises like Star Wars, the Beatles, or TikTok, which are fashion trends, and also media. We also have another notion, another concept, and it is called high culture. It refers to cultural activities and products that are often considered sophisticated, intellectual, or elite. Examples include classical music like Beethoven, Mozart, fine art like Picasso, and literature like, for example, Shakespeare. First, and perhaps most crucial elements are the values. So values are the culture standard for the concern what is good and what is just in society. And values are deeply embedded in culture. They are critical for transmitting and teaching. Beliefs are the tenets or convictions that people hold to be true. And individuals in a society have specific beliefs, but they also share collective values. To illustrate the difference, Americans commonly believe in the American dream, that anyone who works hard enough will be successful and wealthy. Underlying this belief is the American value that wealth is good and important. So this is the national attitude, and this is a set of values and norms and beliefs. Values help shape a society by suggesting what is good and what is bad, what is beautiful or ugly, what is sought for or avoided. And consider the value that the United States places upon youth. Children represent innocence and purity, while a youthful adult appearance signifies sexuality. And shaped by this value, we see individuals who spend millions on cosmetic products or plastic surgeries. Living up to a culture's values can be therefore difficult. It is easy to value good health, but it is hard to quit smoking. Marital monogamy is valued, but many spouses engage in infidelity. So cultural diversity and equal opportunities are for all people are the values and norms. Yet, this is not always observed because of many sociological reasons. Values often suggest how people should behave, but they don't accurately reflect how people do behave. As values portray an ideal culture and the standards the society would like to embrace and live up to. But ideal culture differs from real culture, the way that the society really is. It is based on what occurs and exists. In the ideal culture, there would be no traffic accidents, no murders, no poverty, no tensions. But in real culture, the police officers, the lawmakers, educators, and social workers constantly strive to prevent or repair those accidents, crimes, and injustices. American teenagers are encouraged to value celibacy. However, the number of unplanned pregnancies among teens reveals that it is not the only ideal concept of life to live up to. And one way societies strive to put values into action through the rewards, sanctions, and punishments. When people observe the norms of society and uphold its values, they are often rewarded. A boy who helps an elderly woman board a bus may receive a smile and a thank you. A business manager who raises profit margins in the company may receive a bonus. And people sanction certain behaviors by giving their support, approval, permission, or installing formal actions of disapproval or non-support. Sanctions are a form of social control, a way to encourage conformity to cultural norms. And sometimes people conform to norms in anticipation or expectation of positive sanctions. These positive sanctions are the good grades, which may result in the praise from parents or teachers. When people go against a society's values, they are punished. A boy who shoves an elderly woman aside to board the bus first may receive frowns or even a scolding from other passengers. A business manager who drives away customers will likely be fired. Breaking norms and rejecting values can lead to cultural sanctions, such as earning a negative label, like being lazy, or some formal ways like traffic tickets, fines, or even imprisonment. And values, as we know, are not static. They vary across time and between groups. As people evaluate, they debate and change collective societal beliefs. Values also vary from culture to culture. For example, cultures differ in their values about what kinds of physical closeness is appropriate in public. It is different in Poland, different in Arabic countries. It is different in the United States. For example, any kind of romantic expression of connection that we display in Saudi Arabia may be treated as a social insult and is formally and officially not accepted. So many examples of culture often describe how people are expected to behave in certain situations, those social norms. When, for example, we buy food, when we board a bus, the legendary queues in Great Britain that people orderly wait and form a queue when they wait for a bus. And you cannot just imagine just like pushing yourself in front of the queue and say, I came now and I'm the first one in the queue. It's not acceptable in any form in the UK. Those examples describe the visible and invisible rules of conduct through which societies are structured and how societies, some scientists call norms. And the norms define how we behave in accordance with what society has defined as good or right or important. And formal norms are usually established and they are written rules, like law. And they are behaviors that are worked out and agreed upon in order to suit and serve most people. Laws are formal norms, but there are also manuals we have in companies or some college requirements or university requirements, or, for example, no running signs, which we see at the swimming pools. Going back to the United States, as there are many social examples coming from the US, money is highly valued in the United States, so monetary crimes are punished. It is against the law to rob a bank. The banks go to great lengths to prevent such crimes. And people safeguard valuable possessions and install devices to protect their homes and cars. A less strictly enforced social norm is driving while intoxicated. It is against the law to drive drunk. Drinking is, for the most part, usually accepted social behavior, but there is no social acceptance for drunk driving. And there are many systems and ways of preventing it. So there are different norms and different moral ways which we know that we should obey and observe. We also have a notion of dominant culture. So this is the dominant culture is referred to as the mainstream culture. It is the prevailing set of cultural norms, values, and beliefs that are widely accepted and practiced by the society's most influential members. It often shapes the social, political, and economic structures of a nation. And while dominant cultures often correlate with the numerical majority, it is not always the case. For example, in many Latin American countries, where people of European descent are the minority, the Western culture, which is influenced by European history, often remains the dominant culture. There are also the co-cultures, which are the distinct cultural groups, and they exist within a larger and dominant national culture. And these groups share unique experiences, leading to the development of common beliefs, values, behaviors, rituals, and slang. Co-cultures can be based on factors such as ethnicity, race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, and socio-economic status. And there are intersectional identities that arise within the co-cultures. You can be both a Chinese American and a Catholic, or a vegan and a college athlete. So there are many, many options, and there are many different ways. I'm sorry for the behavior. So there are many examples of co-cultures within the USA, like the ethnic and social groups, as we have the Chinese Americans, Greek Americans. There are many interest groups like cosplayers, dog lovers, or vegans, bloggers, and social groups like cancer survivors, college athletes, firefighters, teachers, and also political groups like Republicans and religious groups, Muslims, Orthodox Jews, and Catholics. So these all are overlapping norms or overlapping groups which we may see as they coexist, and they get on pretty well in the US. And also we have different movements like the hippie movement, the activist groups. So we can go on and enumerate these for quite a long time. So this all shows that culture represents the foundation of the society. Culture is deep down rooted in our minds. It encompasses the values, the processes, and behavioral norms. And while there is the surface culture, which is easy to observe, there is also the deep culture, which requires immersion, experience, and reflection to fully be understood. And it is really significant that to see what shapes our identity, our social interactions, and our worldviews, making this absolutely indispensable element of human behavior and humanity as such. As we see that culture is part of our system, like it is printed in our DNA, as I may say. And if we follow those norms of culture, I think our lives are easier, our lives are within some norms, and they are we live in some kind of understanding. So we follow what we know, and we are also understood. So culture covers not only history, language, it covers the concept of time, the family roles, our attitudes towards spirituality and death, which are also part of our social life, and they are deep down somehow imprinted in our system of lives. So understanding those layers of cultural system is something we should know and understand, and these layers are very often invisible. How individuals perceive the world and behave. We as academics have resources, and we have access to resources, and we can analyze these. But as we see, culture is everywhere, and I would finish off for today, just wrap up, that we cannot survive without culture. Thank you very much for today, and I hope I will be able to meet you during our upcoming sessions and our upcoming meetings online. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you very much. Maybe we have some questions.
Yeah, you can have questions. Yes, of course.
Thank you very much for your lecture. I have one question.
Yes.
How relevant is the concept of psychology culture today, and you want components does it imply, in your opinion?
You mean how it's changed?
Yes.
Yes, I think it's changed in a way because, well, first, if we look at the non-academic way, I guess the culture and the definition was simple. Culture is like our, we see this as traditions, for example. Yes, and I think that was the notion at the beginnings when psychology started searching this. Right now, the research went on deeper, and we see that, as I would say, culture is everywhere. It is in language, in history, in behaviors, as I mentioned today, in social norms. And I guess the analysis of this is the recent research. So the psychology changed the attitude because of bigger exploration, and it's deeper exploration. So I guess this whole concept of culture changed. Some people may say, well, music is culture. Well, in a way, yes, but not only. Yes, we have the traditions, we have artists, we have everything, which is a very vast way of understanding how culture, what makes culture in total. So I guess the recent attitude and the recent concept is that the culture is seen in every aspect of our lives.
I see. I thank you. Very well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Are there any other questions? What do you think?
So if not, well, if you feel like asking, you can ask me on Facebook, or you can send me your question.
Maybe yes, maybe yes.
You have access. Okay, thank you very much for today. It was a real pleasure meeting you all again.